And Maxwell said he'd snap off me head and I'd look just like Paul if we don't change the album cover. I told John, sounds like a good idea, John. It was going a bit far. He did not try to stop me as I called Capitol Records and withdrew the cover. A new photo shoot was hastily arranged later that day. This time we put Fall inside a trunk, representing a casket. In fact, when the cover is turned on its side, Fall appears to be lying in a coffin. I also remember a scar could be seen on Fall's upper lip from plastic surgery. Meanwhile, John was steaming about being forced by Maxwell to do a new cover and was holding his right side where he'd been punched. I suggested to John that we use the song names as clues to Paul's death, and he loved the idea. Drive My Car was what Paul was doing when he was killed. I'm Only Sleeping is what Paul looked like dead. Dr. Robert was the plastic surgeon who turned William Campbell into Fall. Yesterday was about John's sorrow. Act naturally is what we all tried to do so Fall could pass as Paul. Finally, We Can Work It Out was about our decision not to give up. John wrote yesterday for Paul, but agreed to change it to she instead of he. Why she had to go, I don't know. I said something wrong, now I long for yesterday. John was still overridden with grief over the row he had with Paul, in which Paul left the studio in such haste. Dr. Robert's surgeries on William were amazing. In ongoing procedures, William was becoming a convincing Fall. You're a new and better man. He does everything he can. No one can succeed like Dr. Robert. John was growing increasingly frustrated with the deception, and at the same time, Paul's absence in his life as a creative force left John feeling incredibly lonely. His great companion had been gone for over a year, and it was clearly affecting him. Thus, John named our next album Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. And he would flood Sgt. Pepper's with clues. Both Ringo and I warned him it was a dangerous game, that too many clues might be noticed and the Beatles would end. Not to mention the threat of death we were under from MI5. But our arguments fell on deaf ears. In Paul's absence, it was John's band, and John had the final say.
Do you have any acknowledged leader of the group? No, not really.
John designed the front cover as a funeral scene. The foreground is a freshly dug piece of earth, complete with floral decoration and a bass drum gravestone facing the grave. The The crowd was made up of the people that Paul would have wanted at his funeral. John even went a step further. Every member attending was dead, had a near-death experience, or had portrayed death. Edgar Allan Poe died an awful death. Marilyn Monroe was a suicide. And Bob Dylan had claimed a near-fatal motorbike crash in the summer of 1966, even though that was just an excuse to enter drug rehab. On the bass drum gravestone, John created a clue requiring a mirror. In the middle of Lonely Hearts, you get the message 1, 1, 1. Axe, eat, die. The 3 ones represented the 3 live Beatles, and Paul was the axe, meaning he had been crossed out, dead. Cleverly enough, it also showed the date of Paul's demise. The first 2 numbers being 11 for the month of November, and the next 2 digits IAX, the Roman numeral for 9, November 9. To the left, we are depicted as we were at Paul's funeral. Ringo had been crying, but said he could feel Paul comforting him as we peered down into the grave. Next, John placed an arrangement of yellow flowers to form Paul's left-handed bass guitar, with 3 wires for strings to signify only 3 remaining Beatles. The bass also formed a P for Paul when turned on its side. Another clue started with the word ear in the bass drum. Just under that, Paul's rugby trophy served as the letter I, spelling lies, while the arrangement of yellow flowers spelled Paul. Here lies Paul. On the far right, John placed a doll, and on her lap was a model of the white Austin Healey Paul was driving when he had the fatal crash. The doll was placed in the lap of a deathly-looking shrouded figure to represent the angel of death, who wore a blood-stained driver's glove in his left hand. Just above the B, John placed another doll, but split the head open to symbolize Paul's head injury. The priest's open hand was again above Paul's head, but this time it belonged to Stephen Crane, author of The Open Boat, that helped inspire us to pull off the cover-up. John, Ringo and I posed for the photo, but for Paul, a cardboard cutout was used, propped up by the rest of us, just like in real life. Next to Diana Dawes, John placed a mirror image of a walrus to illustrate Paul's final state of being. The inner sleeve looks quite innocent until you realize it's soaking up red blood. On the back cover, we faced Paul away to again symbolize he was not a real Beatle. John made sure the lyrics "Without You" were printed on Paul's head, while I'm pointing at the lyric "Wednesday morning at 5 o'clock," indicating the time of Paul's death. Finally, Paul is wearing a badge on his left arm with the initials OPD, officially pronounced dead. Despite all the album cover clues, John was not satisfied. In fact, he invented a new way of hiding clues by inserting audio messages in reverse, hidden by the original recording, so they could only be heard by playing the album backwards. Thus, John coined the term backwards masking. I thought this silly at first, but then realized it was not as risky as album cover clues. Record players only played forwards. Perhaps if John were encouraged in this direction, he might completely stop with album cover clues before we were caught. In the title track, the line about Billy Shears is a play on words. Let me introduce you to the one and only Billy Shears. We're introducing William, Billy's here because we didn't want the Beatles to end. I don't really want to stop the show. On the reprise, John reveals the truth about Foal's disguise using backwards masking. It was a fake mustache. Once Foal's surgeries were complete, he was eager to appear on telly. I remember he gave an interview with his fake mustache covering his scar and tried to sound smart, but he didn't know anything.
It's just a straightforward endeavour kind of thing, just to do something other than what's been done before, because what's been done before isn't necessarily the answer.
In Getting Better, we're encouraging Foal, who was in fact mastering his Paul imitation. I have to admit it's getting better, a little better all the time. On the reverse, John describes Paul's crash scene. Many other clues to Paul's car accident were placed throughout the album. Wednesday morning at 5 o'clock as the day began, when I caught a glimpse of Rita, I took her home. I nearly made. The news was rather sad. He blew his mind out in a car. He didn't notice that the lights had changed. A crowd of people stood and stared. They'd seen his face before. Nobody was really sure if he was from the House of Lords. Nothing to do to save his life. You are on your own. You are in the street. Never glimpsed the truth. If they only knew. We were talking about the love that's gone so cold, and the people who gain the world but lose their soul. Life flows on within you and without you. We missed Paul so much, we decided to try something desperate. We sought the help of Maharishi Mahesh Yogi.
When through the practice of transcendental meditation, the mind goes deep within to the source of thought, transcends the thought and gains bliss consciousness, and is capable of maintaining that even when it comes out into the worldly experience of objective nature. It is called spiritual life.
We wanted him to direct Paul's soul to enter and take over Paul's body.
This is life in eternal liberation, and without this, life is in bondage. A great loss of eternal bliss consciousness and gain of a worldly fleeting joy.
He agreed to try if we came to his ashram in India. So we went. Mia Farrow was there for some reason, having just left Frank Sinatra.